Do you have like a little pooch above your C-section scar? Are you holding fat above your C-section scar? Are you inflamed? And honestly, guys, the answer is, hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. If you are new here, my name is Rachel, and I would absolutely love it if you hit that red subscribe button down below. And of course, if you are a returning viewer or subscriber, you know how much I love you. Thank you so much for coming back and clicking on another video. In today's video, we are going to be talking about my C-section. I have gotten so many questions about my C-section, if it hurt, what the recovery was like, how my body is now, and I'm going to be giving you guys all those details. I'm pretty excited to film today's video because I know that I knew absolutely nothing prior to getting my C-section. So I really hope that this video helps you if you are either getting a C-section or if you just recently got one and you have some questions or concerns. Now, of course, you guys know that I am not a doctor, and so everything that I'm saying is based on my own experience and my own opinion. And of course, if you have any medical questions, you should advise your doctor. So let's go ahead and just jump right into the questions. I asked you guys over on Instagram to ask me any questions about my C-section, and you guys definitely pulled through. One of the most common questions that I got was just about recovery in general. A few of you asked, when were you fully recovered and able to start exercising again? The guidelines that you're given on a C-section is identical to a vaginal birth. You can't do anything strenuous for 6 weeks post-op. I just waited the normal 6 weeks to lift anything over 20 pounds, but I'm not gonna lie, I did start walking and taking like little walks outside and maybe a couple little walks on the treadmill around like 4 or 5 weeks postpartum, but I really felt like my body was ready and I was in tune with my body. And another big indicator that you're ready or not for exercise is if you've stopped bleeding or not, because just like with a vaginal birth, after a C-section, you're going to bleed on and off for 6 weeks. So if you go on a long walk and you've stopped bleeding and then you start again, then that's probably a good indicator that you kind of need to pull back on exercise. Did your second one hurt less than your first one? So this is kind of a hard question for me specifically to answer because, as you guys know, with my first C-section, my body had just been through so much trauma. And so I honestly have a hard time telling the difference between what I was healing from the accident and what I was healing from actually being postpartum and having just gone through a C-section. My recovery with the first one was harder than my recovery with the second one, but I'm just not sure if that was due to other circumstances. But I will say that both recoveries were phenomenal. I was completely off painkiller with Blakely, so my second C-section, 7 days post-op, but I was on narcotics up until that 7-day mark, and that helped so much. And then when I got off of them, I was doing pretty well. And I do want to say that I have a very low pain tolerance and I'm like a huge baby. So if I say the recovery was awesome, then you know that it was. Was it hard to go in for your second C-section after having a traumatic first one? So I talk about this a lot in my videos about Blakely's birth. But yes, the idea of another C-section was very scary for me because my first C-section was an emergency C-section. But let me just tell you guys that there is a night and day difference between a planned C-section and an emergency C-section. I put a poll on my Instagram before I gave birth to Blakely, and I asked for people to tell me positive C-section experiences. Like, I just wanted to fill my mind with positivity and hear a bunch of wonderful stories, and you guys totally pulled through for me like you always do. And so many women told me about just how incredible their C-section experiences were, and I still felt like in my heart, I'm never gonna be one of those women. I am gonna be terrified. This is gonna be scary, but like, I'm gonna pull through. And I can honestly say that if there was one day I could relive in my entire life, I would pick the day that I gave birth to Blakely, because it was the coolest, most calming, healing experience I've ever had. If you've watched Blakely's birth video, you know that. And so although the idea was very, very difficult for me, I'm so grateful that I did it. If I had more babies, I would opt for C-sections on all of them. How long were you in recovery at the hospital? Okay, so this does differ just a little bit from a vaginal birth. You do stay an extra night, I believe, when you have a C-section. Now, be mindful that with both of my babies, I was in the hospital for a week, because with Beckham, it's obvious why I was in the hospital for a week. And then with Blakely, we got admitted on a Friday, but then they didn't want me to give birth until Sunday because they wanted me to get those steroid shots for her. By the time I delivered on Sunday, we didn't get discharged until Thursday morning. We were there for almost a week, but if you don't count the time that I was there before I delivered her, then I stayed for 4 nights with Blakely. And I know that everybody's different. Like for me, it was really comforting because she was so tiny to be in the hospital, just for them to come and check on her and make sure that everything was perfect before I went home. But I know that a lot of women are like, I just want to recover and heal in my own house, which I feel like that would be me if I ever had a third. I would just be like, get me out of this hospital as soon as you can, as long as I knew my baby was like 100% healthy. Would you electively do one again if you knew that there would be no complications? Even not knowing whether there would be complications or not, I would electively do a C-section all day, every day. And I'm not encouraging you to do one. I am just saying that that is by far what's best for me, what's best for my body. And one of those is because I did have a huge scare with a very severe condition called placenta accreta that I've talked to you guys about. And so it would be very, very dangerous for me to attempt a vaginal birth in the future. And so I would probably be forced into future C-sections, but even if I wasn't, I would still opt for a C-section, because after you've already delivered C-section, then doing a Vbac is just as risky as doing a C-section, as long as I've been informed correctly. I believe that is true. Once again, I am not a doctor. Ask your doctor, ask your OB, all of these questions. But for me personally, C-section all day, every day. Has your stomach ever been the same since? And what about the scar tissue around the incision? Okay, so this is kind of a difficult question, and this is one that I have gotten hundreds of DMs over. So many women have reached out to me and asked me, do you have like a little pooch above your C-section scar? Are you holding fat above your C-section scar? Are you inflamed? And honestly, guys, the answer is yes, just a little bit. When you have a C-section scar, right above it, there is inflamed tissue where if you turn to the side, it does like stick out just a little bit. Now, keep in mind that this is so low, you could literally wear a low-rise bikini and your scar would be covered. I personally don't feel like it has mentally affected me. And I am definitely more prone to body dysmorphia because of my history. You guys know this. And I remember when I was healing from my C-section scar with Beckham, I actually asked my doctor about this inflammation. And I was definitely concerned that it was never gonna go away, but it did continue to get smaller and smaller and smaller as time went on. Even after I hit my pre-baby weight, the inflammation above the scar still got smaller even without my weight changing, if that makes sense. And so I just tell women, you really just need to be patient with your body. You just went through a huge surgery that's very, very traumatic on your body. Even if it was planned, even if everything went perfectly, you just had layers of your stomach opened up for a baby to come out and stitched and sewn all back together. You really need to be patient as your body is healing, and I know it can be difficult to see your body in a completely different state than it was prior, but I just really encourage you to remember what that scar represents. Like every time I see my scar, you guys, I think about the 2 people that put it there, and I wouldn't change it. Also be mindful that the only person that's really going to see your scar is you and maybe a significant other, or maybe really close friends. But even when I'm wearing like seriously a low-rise bikini around all of my girlfriends, nobody can see it. And the inflammation does go down over time. Honestly, I would say that I have a better body post-baby than I did pre-baby, and that is even with my C-section scar and even with a little bit of inflammation that I personally believe will always be there. How long does it take you to feel normal after having a C-section or just giving birth in general? This is definitely going to be different woman to woman, but I think that postpartum anxiety and depression was a bigger contributing factor to not feeling normal post-baby than having a C-section. As I'm filming this, I am almost 1 year postpartum, and honestly, With Blakely, my postpartum journey has been a ride, but I will say it's kind of like unfair to judge my postpartum experience with Beckham, because my postpartum experience with him was him being in the NICU, so of course I was devastated. And then when he got home, he was only home for a few months before I was pregnant again, so then my emotions were more based on being pregnant. So that's kind of like a confusing situation. So this is my real postpartum experience, and I will say that it took me a really long time to physically feel normal, but it's taking me a much longer time to mentally and emotionally feel normal. But I'm just trying to be patient with myself, get the extra help if I need it, and I know that day will come. What are some aftercare tips for a C-section? Okay, if you get a C-section, you cannot leave the hospital without a belly band. I know that sounds stupid, but trust me. Right after you have your surgery, when you like stand up and start walking around, you're gonna feel so much pressure on your scar, especially because you're gonna have a belly, hello, you're like a day postpartum, and all of that weight and pressure is going to pull on your scar. And so if you wrap this belly band around your stomach, you're going to be so much more comfortable. It's literally a night and day difference. Every girl that I've recommended this to has literally messaged me and been like, oh my gosh, I never could have lived without that. And I'm like, girl, I got you. So be sure to get a belly band before you leave the hospital. That's like my #1 tip. Another great tip is to walk around as quickly as you can and as much as you can. And when I say quickly, I mean, you don't need to be like power walking around the hospital, but I mean as quickly after your surgery as you can. So I was up and out of bed and pacing the hospital halls 12 hours postpartum. And I am telling you, that made a world of difference. Every doctor will tell you that the more you can move around, the faster you're gonna heal, and that is the truth. So what I would do is I would have a belly band that I would wear when I would walk around, but I would also time my like little hospital walks with when I got my painkiller. So I would typically go on like a little walk around the hospital when I was like 30 minutes post taking my painkiller, and that would help me have like the endurance that I needed to do it. But it really did help me heal quickly, and I think it attributed to having such a positive experience with both of my C-sections. Can I prep my body for a C-section like I can for a vaginal birth? Not in the same ways, but I do think that exercise is extremely important regardless of how you're giving birth when you are pregnant. And I did have a lot of doctors actually tell me when I was pregnant that due to my activity level and due to the amount of muscle that I had on my body, that I was probably gonna have a really positive experience postpartum, and we definitely found that to be true. And so I think it's really just taking really good care of yourself in general, making sure that you're eating well, you're hydrated, you're getting enough sleep, and just exercise as regularly as you can. Do you think there's a clear benefit from a scheduled to an emergency C-section? So, oh my word, absolutely. It's literally like a completely different surgery. It's a completely different experience. Just to put this into perspective for you guys, Beckham was born in 6 minutes and Blakely was born in 30. So that goes to show you that for an appropriate C-section to take place, it probably takes about a half an hour, just based on my experience with Blakely. And when Beckham was born and it was an emergency and our lives were on the line, he was born in 6 minutes. So that's a little bit terrifying to think about, and it's hard for me to think about, you know, what he must have been feeling and how scared he was. But there is obviously a huge benefit to having a scheduled C-section. It's a completely different experience, literally night and day. I would recommend watching my birth video with Beckham and then my birth video with Blakely to clearly see those differences. All right, so I'm gonna answer one more question and then I'm going to wrap up this video because I don't want it to be too long. Did your doctors give you an option to do a VBAC for your second baby, or did you choose a repeat C-section? Actually, both. Because I went into my second pregnancy expecting to opt for another C-section because I did recover so well and I already had the scar, and so I really just wanted them to open me up in the exact same place again and for me to deliver my baby the exact same way. I was also counseled by a few doctors that having a VBAC was going to be just as risky as having another C-section, so I figured I would just do another C-section because that was what I felt was right for me and my body. But then as my pregnancy progressed and I developed some complications, the option for a VBAC was taken away from me. And so I think that the Lord was just kind of preparing me to have a C-section anyways. And so that was what I was always comfortable with. That's what I always had in my mind, and that's what I ended up getting to do, and it was the best experience ever. I hope that you guys enjoyed this little Q&A, and once again, I am definitely not here to tell you that you should get a C-section or that you should opt for a C-section. This was just all of my personal experiences and my personal opinions on all of the questions that you guys asked. If you have any further questions, you should talk to your doctor or talk to your OB about what is best for you. If you haven't yet, be sure to hit that red subscribe button down below, and also feel free to click that little notification bell. That way you're notified every single time I upload a video. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Bye.